pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age, question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. The one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshiped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind. Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Good morning. It's so unusual to speak to an empty church, but I'm certainly good morning to all of those watching on television and on the internet. This gospel is so appropriate for what's going on in the world because it is a gospel of hope. That's the whole symbolism of the joyful Sunday of Lent, in the sense that we are people of hope, and we are people recognizing who Jesus is and what he has done for us, or how he is guiding us in our lives. The whole first passage, from the Old Testament, how David was chosen, how Samuel comes to Bethlehem and meets with all of the people Saul meets with all the people that in David's family, and recognizes it is David, the lowly one, the young one, the little boy who was a little shepherd, who the family didn't even think anything of. And he was the one who was pointed out. He was the one that was recognized, was sent. And from that moment on, he grows closer to the Lord because he is anointed with the Lord. The same thing follows through with the gospel today. The gospel today is not about a man born blind. It's not about all sorts of people that what happens to them. And it's about pointing to who Jesus is. Because he even says when Jesus heals the man from his blindness, he says, "Go over to the pool of Siloam," which means sent, which emphasizes he is the one who has been sent to bring sight to the world, to bring an understanding to the world. That whole gospel reading, which is, by the way, I heard from the deacon, you want me to read the whole thing? But the thing is, that whole gospel is a story of the awakening of our faith in our lives, how we see the Lord in our presence. We are blind, yes. We are born blind to the Lord, and it is the Lord who opens our eyes. I love the scenario that goes through. First, the people say, "Is that really him? The man that we knew, the beggar?" No, that's not him. Then when they find out that it is him, then they say, "Were you always blind? Was this a charade that you were playing?" They fail to believe over and over and again when they are confronted with the issues. Constantly, they even bring his parents in, and this is very important, especially in our day. They bring his parents in, and his parents are afraid, and they refuse to respond. "Well, yeah, he was born blind, but how he got this way, we don't know." The fear that can overcome us. We can speak that about today in our world. So much fear that we seem to push aside the Lord. What's going to happen to us? Where is that going to go? I mean, let's face it. The big talk on the news is financial problems, rather than recognizing who we are and who God is in our lives. The message is very clear. We'll be joyful when we see that presence of the Lord. We will be joyful when we put our trust in him, when we know that he walks with us. I love this. At the very end, even Jesus appears to the man, and he recognizes and he points out the fact that, yes, I'm with you. You are in sight. You have that understanding that God is walking with you, is present with you, has been sent to you. Every one of us are a part of that. Every one of us share an understanding in that. The whole scenario the whole story is about recognizing the presence of God in our lives. Amidst ups and downs, amidst difficulties, amidst everything, but recognizing God has sent His Son for us. To recognize how God has blessed us, has given us that sight. And so many times, there are so many things that bombard us, that push us away, keep us blind. Oh yes, I believe. But Lord, what are you doing to us? No. It's a reminder to us what our faith is all about. You know, ironically, this morning I received an email from someone. I don't know who. But they were quoting scriptures, all sorts of things about how you know, we believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and there's nothing in there nothing in the scriptures and everything else. That's why we're being chastised now. I said, ay. Read this gospel. See what this gospel is pointing out. This gospel is pointing out that you are being blind by your fears, by your cares, by all the things that you think are important, but not to know the true facts, that God is with you. His love is there, consoling you, giving you strength, and putting your trust in Him is the most important part of our relationship with God. We are called today to recognize that there is a joy to that, not a fear, not a misunderstanding that God's mercy is for only a few or is not meant for us, but called to understand that God is present to us in many ways. And in that presence, He is there with us. Are we blind? Or do we have true sight? This gospel is not about being physically blind. This gospel is about being blind to understanding God's love in our lives. It's His presence in our lives. And making certain that we walk with that understanding. At the very end, Jesus even says to the man who was originally born blind, He says, there are people who think they have sight, they've been given sight, and they turn away from it. Well, that's exactly what the scenario, all of the examples that you see about how the people went back and forth with this man. Are you the real one? Were you really born blind? What do you say of this? And then he grows through this confrontations. He grows to better understanding and greater sight of the Lord. That's what each and every one of us should be doing. Making certain that in our prayer that we are making that connection with the Lord. The reason why we gather, that we spend time in prayer, is to know that your will be done, Lord. And when we do that, we see His joy. We see that His presence is always with us. This is ironically, prophetically, this gospel is meant for the world today. Specifically, all of us should be recognizing that God's love is for us. And when we put our trust in it, our eyes are opened. Fear is put aside. We're not like the deaf man's parents. I'm so scared I'm not going to say anything. I'm so scared I'm not going to do anything. I recognize God's love in my life. What's more important than that? If we believe that there is eternal life, what are we afraid of? If we believe that Christ is with us, has died for us so that we may have life eternal, what are we worried about? We recognize the most important thing in our lives is that union with the Lord. And we are called to spend some time these next few weeks with the Lord, making